YouTube now, so we may begin. So first of all, I'd like to wish everybody watching a wonderful evening or morning, wherever, or afternoon, wherever you are watching from in the world. So far, I'm happy to announce we've had 456 registrations on this webinar, which is testimony to the power of attractiveness of the topic of female leadership, and also to the star power of our panelists and our presidents. So first of all, to introduce myself, my name is Kevin Hinn. I'm the Secretary General of the Junior Chamber International, a global non-government organization for enterprising young people around the world and young leaders. And without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor to the committee chair of the Global Women's Committee, Mrs. Swati Dlamini Mandela, who will say a few words of introduction. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and thank you to our two wonderful speakers for agreeing to do this panel for us. I know that I'm very much excited and looking forward to hearing some incredible insights from the both of them, and an engaging, thought-provoking session. With all protocols observed, a warm welcome to the World Business Angel Investment Forum online roundtable discussion. I am honored to address you as the president of the WBAF Global Women Leaders Committee, and to have the opportunity to introduce the topic of today's discussion. Our topic today focuses on two key aspects. Firstly, the severe global crisis we find ourselves in relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. And secondly, the current and growing need to have more women leaders. These topics are significant because in times of crisis, we tend to look toward our leaders for guidance. We are given an insight into how governmental, corporate, and community leaders navigate their way through murky waters, and what values, imperatives, and understandings they anchor their solutions and strategies on. In this regard, these times offer a bittersweet opportunity to weigh in on the advances we are making in not only tackling COVID-19, but also long-standing gender imbalances in leadership roles. It is our task today to give thought to these topics and to critically discuss their interplay, and to more importantly, share opinions and insights as to what the way forward should look like. On a more personal note, during these unprecedented moments of uncertainty, isolation, and often fear, I remember and refocus on what is close to my heart, which is my roots. It is crucial that in the current circumstances, we as Africans remember what has made us strong. Our strength is deeply embedded in our history and in our ability to heal, overcome, unite, and to grow. However, we are not alone in this. There are many countries all across the world that have had similar struggles and liberation victories woven into their histories, which have paved their way into a more prosperous future. The COVID-19 pandemic has already swept across the globe, leaving devastation in its tracks, the loss of lives, livelihoods, crumbling economies, and failing socioeconomic systems. But in these moments of despair, I'm strengthened by my late grandparents, Nelson and Winnie, and their personal journeys. Despite the catastrophic impact of COVID-19, I would like us to encourage the global community to unshackle ourselves from despair and not be paralyzed by panic and actionism. We should instead understand that our purpose here today stretches further than ourselves, and rather toward our global community and to one another. We should consider this time as an opportunity to remember those on the front lines, reflect on our gift of simple freedoms, refocus our values, reset our priorities, realign toward one another, and we can resolve this crisis together. The only constant in life is change, and all our lives post-COVID-19 will in one way or another be changed forever. There will be shifts in our business activities, spiritual journeys, social habits, and educational practices. I know for me as a mom, it's been very challenging. My prayers are with those who have lost loved ones and who are fighting with their own battles at this very difficult time. Let us remember and pray for those who are in vulnerable communities and who have been displaced and who are alone or sick and who are afraid. Let us support our government's responses and be reassured of our resilience and our ability to overcome. Although significant efforts are being made, we must remember that the long walk to freedom and joint and equitable prosperity is far from over. And what the race requires is for us to extend our boundaries of collaboration and love, and to remain focused on globalizing our efforts. Time is a scarce resource, and we should not stand idle. This is our time to demonstrate and spread the African philosophy of Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. As a global village, we must be encouraged to look past our differences and recognize both our individual and collective ability to rebuild together. As the world searches for a remedy to COVID-19, we must remember to find remedies that relate to other global challenges, be it gender inequality, poverty, or religious conflicts. The world needs to and will recover from the impacts of COVID-19. But again, we must stand up and stand together in our fight against our growing global injustices and inequalities that have potential to aggravate even the most desperate of circumstances further. Lastly, in quoting my grandfather Nelson, it always seems impossible until it's done. Let us forge a way forward together and find collective solutions for this generation and the next. Thank you, Kevin, for agreeing to moderate, and I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, President Swati, for these inspirational words. Indeed, it's great to hear all these insights, especially about the African continent, which has been particularly touched by this crisis. Now, I will say a few words of introduction to the topic which is at hand before handing over to our panelists, which is we're all talking about female leadership, and research has highlighted over the last few years that only 25% of parliamentarians are women and less than 10% of heads of state or government are women as it stands. It is therefore a timely moment to discuss why the world needs more female leaders, especially it's been particularly worrying to watch the male domination in the COVID-19 related spheres. According to the Canberra Times in Australia, the absence of women leaders should matter because firstly, it relates to the health of a democracy and the breadth of the understanding of representation and leadership. Women, in most cases, make up half or more of the population, and as a matter of justice and equity, women with a necessary expertise and experience should be leading and visible. Now, during these unprecedented times, leaders around the world are being scrutinized on their responses to contain the COVID-19 pandemic in their countries. Many countries have implemented decisive and successful measures that have managed to contain the coronavirus and lower infection and mortality rates in many countries for the time being, such as Germany, Taiwan, or New Zealand. Countries that have acted with seriousness and swiftness range in location and size, but many of them actually do have the same thing in common. They are run by women. Women in leadership have a demonstrated history of success in crisis management. So how can we empower more women to take on more leadership roles in a post-COVID-19 world after this pandemic and as we adjust to a new normal and transform challenges into opportunities? Now, I personally believe that what we need to strive for in the future is a society where we can develop leaders for a changing world, leaders who are evaluated not on the basis of their gender, but on the basis of their talents and merits alone. We'll be approaching this topic and this issue by identifying the fundamental causes for the current dearth in female leaders, and we'll be obtaining insights from our panelists, notably as to how educational and cultural barriers can have played a part in this in the future and how we can overcome them. Leadership is also required in all three sectors of society, government, business, and civil society, in order to be able to be the most effective across the board. And our panelists will explain how female leadership can actually bridge the gap in between these three sectors. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce our distinguished panelists who will today share their extensive experience in all sorts of domains on these topics. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Her Excellency Professor Amina Ghorib Fakim. who is the 6th president of the Republic of Mauritius and the first female president of this republic, which was born in 1992. And I would also like to introduce Her Royal Highness Princess Dr. Nisreen El Hashamite, the Executive Director of the Royal Academy of Science International Trust. Great honor to have you on board. So we'll begin this session. First of all, I'll be asking several questions to some of the specific panelists, and then we'll be answering questions from the audience who so please feel free when the time comes to post questions on the chat section. So first of all, I'd like to begin with the first question to both of you, to come back to the point that was made in the introduction. Now, as I mentioned, certain countries which are led by women currently seem to have obtained positive results in the fight against COVID-19. And I would like to ask both of our panelists to share with us their thoughts on the current situation, differences they have noted in the reactions of male and female leaders to the crisis in the different regions of the world. What intrinsic qualities do you believe that female leaders can bring and have brought to the equation in these times of crisis? So I'd like to begin with Professor Gurib Fakim, if you may post your answer in about 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. I think we'll have first of all to thank BABARS for putting this together. And one thing that I would like to say, Kevin, is that we, as you have rightly pointed out in the introduction, there are so few women leaders. In fact, there are very few female heads of state. And I think if I want to be controversial from the very beginning, is that us women, we've had to play along the rules which have not been written by us. So we have been told to play by a certain rule written essentially by men, and we are supposed to act on that and deliver better or worse or whatever it is along these rules. But over the past few weeks, what we have witnessed, and as you have rightly pointed out, the successes have come. I mean, I'm not disparaging the men because there are some countries led by men, of course, that have been very successful. But what has been coming out in the media is how these countries, which are led by women, they have got tremendous success. And I think here we'll tease out some of these issues, which I think will still remain relevant post-COVID. One thing we have seen, if you look at the leadership out in Germany or out in Taiwan or out in New Zealand, we have seen how these ladies have acted with urgency. And in a crisis of that dimension, they didn't waste any vital time, and they acted, if I quote New Zealand, they went hard and they went early. The other thing I notice as well with these leadership is that they have communicated with total transparency. Communicating bad news is a thankless task, but communicating in transparency, I think, is an antidote to this risk. They have communicated regularly, they have provided honest, accurate description of the reality, and they have been very clear, they have been very humane, and they have tried to anticipate wherever, as much as they can, what was going to happen. And when there has been mishaps, they have rectified it very, very quickly because, it's a highly evolving situation. They have again communicated totally with, again, full transparency. And what they have done on a daily basis, I noticed that with New Zealand, they have engaged in constant updating. And we have seen, for example, in terms of messaging, in terms of body language, they haven't wasted time, for example, going into suits. They have communicated in T-shirts from their homes with their families. But what has also been very, very important is that these ladies, and now I go back to Germany, for example, Angela Merkel, she's herself a scientist. She did not take unto herself to actually communicate. She relied on the expert ideas of epidemiologists, of scientists, of the whole team, so as to come up with the most credible and most relevant information then. So this is again why I'm threading in this notion of scientists, because you will see again in history has repeated itself, is that they have leveraged the right people in an evolving problem to be part of in terms of updating the challenge. And one thing as well, I think this is very much a feminine trait, is that they have tapped into the suffering with a meaning. They have shown compassion. They have shown leadership that, can only come the way women do that, because we're all mothers, we all, daughters, and we are pastoral in our approach. We haven't been aggressive, contrary to what feminine leadership is always described as being aggressive, as being feisty, as being emotional. We have used that emotion precisely not to take people purely on statistics term. Death have not been relegated to purely statistics term. We have shown that this death, there has to be a meaning to it. And they have threaded that into the communication to the people. And I think this leadership has been strengthened by continually referring to the big picture as an anchor for meaning, and resisting, again, as I said, the temptation to compartmentalize or to actually consider human life in purely statistics terms. And I think leadership in these uncertain terms is a fast-moving crisis, making oneself available and communicating and leading with empathy, I think has been the discerning factor, which we have seen where they have got results, where they have led with empathy, where they have led with compassion, where they have led with credibility, and also being very humble in the approach. And I think, to me, this picture that I have painted, if of course Princess Nisreen agrees and Swati agrees, to me this has been the key, the crux of female leadership as we have seen it. So bring in the credibility, bring in the women, bring in the science. Don't go into hubris, communicate with the purpose. I mean, this to me has branded female leadership as we have seen for the past 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for these great insights. Indeed, yes, Chancellor Merkel notably has been lauded over the last 15 years since she's been Chancellor for her emotional intelligence, and this is something which has been quite prominent in this recent crisis. So I'd like to ask Princess Nisreen the same question about your opinion on female leadership in this crisis. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And it is very difficult to share my view first after a woman in science, a professor, and at the same time a political leader. So it will be quite difficult. But as you may know, I represent the civil society. I represent science community and also the medical community. So I will allow me first by thanking Mr. Babers Altontash for his leadership and great efforts and the continuous efforts that he put to bridge the world in reviving peace through economic development. And also I would like to thank him on behalf of the Royal Academy of Science International Trust for his great support for women, scientists, and humanity. I also would like to thank my dear friend and colleague, Swati, and also thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's nice to say Mr. among women. And what a pleasure to be with in a panel with Madam President, a dear friend and a colleague, and also a woman in science, a visionary person. Now, let's start by raising some points here. Is women leadership a fashion, or is it a need or a necessity? We need to consider some points here if we want to develop the system of women leadership or to encourage more women into leadership. Also, is women leadership mean a separation between two components that make a society, female and male, or because so many people keep declaring male dominant terminology in every field and everywhere, or it is more a partnership between women and men to rebuild the fragile and broken and damaged modern society. Are women leaders working for other women, starting with rights, empowerment, etc. And let's analyze the number of women leaders and the number of women in their cabinets, and then we can see a better picture. Of course, I'm coming from a scientific background, and I have to look at everything from a scientific, not political aspect. Now, to start by thinking on how to define women leadership, we must redefine women leadership. What does it mean? What we women want to achieve. Further, is leadership is about reaching high position like CEO, president, secretary general, etc. Or do we consider a mother is a leader, a woman farmer is a leader, a teacher is a leader, a woman doctor or scientist is a leader, etc. And then everyone contributing to the development, every woman contributing to the development of her community or her society is a leader. Another point here to raise is, do we women feel equal, or do women feel inferior? Do women need someone to give them their rights, the promotion, equality, or even priority? If we believe inside us and within us that we are equal, then we will go and get our rights, and we will not need someone to give us these rights, and we will, whether a male or female, we will not ask anybody, we will get our rights. Therefore, we need to change first in women leadership. We need to change the psychological stereotyping of women less than men, or not enough women leaders, etc., and focus on what women experts as leaders can do to revive peace, economy, and socio-economic sustainable development. Now, we need to analyze as well the issue of women leadership in much more scientific way to get a proper framework and action plans that can bring more women leaders into position. If we, in the concept note, you spoke about the male domination in the decision making. Well, actually, I will talk here about the impact of media. In 2015, when we addressed at the UN, the role or the impact of media on women's health and development, it was quite a bit strange, particularly that we were talking about the role of media in the post-2015 agenda. And if you look back into the impact of Hollywood and the advertisement companies, how they change how they represent women, whether as models or using them as objects to promote products, and how such an image had an impact on younger generations of girls and boys, and also had an impact on women experts or professionals who wanted to stay away from such an image. Here, we needed to focus a lot, and we advocated as an organization a lot with media, with people, with knocking on the doors, till we start to find that women experts are now on programs, and we created this change since 2017. Yes, there is now a great representation of women experts, and this is how we need to show women as leaders. There is another thing to take about the media and its comparison to leadership, neglecting the system, the culture, in addition to other differences. And also, does media show other women leaders? Now, for example, if we talk about Bandaranaike and Indira Gandhi in Sri Lanka and India, respectively, and in their 60s and 70s, what about Sheikh Hasina, the president of Bangladesh at the moment? How she is coping? We don't know. Then, is every woman leader is a great leader? We need to analyze in order to get a better picture. Like, for example, if I'm currently in the UK, Margaret Thatcher, she believed in privatization. Before Margaret Thatcher, the British health system was one of the best in the world, if not the best. And now, because of Margaret Thatcher, who reduced funding to the NHS and kept saying, if you have money, you can get the service, then it is not about, it's not only the leader or the system. If we look at, it is the background of that leader, as Professor Amina just mentioned, You know, if you look at the professor of the German chancellor, she's a professor of science. So she applied science, scientific methods into developing the system, which was existing, but she developed it and she created a real change, a great leadership. I'm sure that Professor Amina did the same when she was the president. Now, we need to think also, is every political leader successful and created positive change? We need proper studies to give justice for women leaders and to create examples for our generations and the generations to come after us. Further, we need to consider the women representations in parliaments or governments. And we need to realize that in many countries that where women enjoy full political rights, they don't want to go into politics or diplomacy, or even to be promoted into high administrative positions. Some cannot create the balance between their social life and their work life, and others prefer to remain in their professional career. And we have seen that a lot. So the big issue here is how to encourage women to take leading position and to involve in policy making at all levels, not necessary to be a president, prime minister, or minister, but to be involved in policy making. And also to be involved, why not to be a president? Why not to be a prime minister or a minister or as an ambassador as well? Well, the biggest change we saw, if you look at for example, international community before 2017, we found that the female representation in top positions in the UN wasn't enough. They were talking about gender equality, etc. But the whole picture started to change in 2017 onward. Now, back to the COVID-19 and as well about what women, the role of women leaders can play to revive the economy and to revive life. Well, we need to bring also, and coming back to the main issue, to bring to the issue of media, that we need media to cover the number of women specialized in all fields of sciences, taking the lead in developing tests, in working on the vaccine or treatment, or those who are in the front line doing their services, etc. Or those who are economists trying to find solutions for, okay, after the lockdown, what will happen, how to revive economy and development. Also, we need to think about what role women can play in current situation or even the post-COVID-19 issue. We need more women to speak out, to speak in a scientific methodology. For example, I will give you an example. While everyone, like so many people are criticizing the President of the United States, but rather, if we look deeper into the issue, we will see it is like Democrats, Republicans fight on a political power, over a political power, neglecting the people's lives. Here, we need women leaders in their fields, in every field, to come out and speak out to bridge the political differences for the benefit of a humanity, for the benefit of a human well-being. Also, we need to have women economists, professionals, and businesswomen to look at the situation of the private sector and its policies. We all know that many companies moved its factories to other countries for cheaper labors or to make more profit, neglecting the society. We saw this in the PPE, in the equipment, in medications, etc. To achieve women leadership now, we need women professionals, scientists in all fields of sciences, whether it is life, applied, or social sciences, to come out and speak, raise their voice, be the convener for solutions. Then we can, women can bring a lot, whether the vision, the expert, the solution, more importantly, the unity, solidarity, and the development that is based on partnership and collaboration. In fact, now, more than ever, we need visionary women to change the global system that failed every human being and the humanity, to change for the better, for peace and prosperity. And this is why we really need women leaders now more than ever. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. We indeed need women leaders more than ever. And you touched on a very effective point, which leads to the next question about encouraging female leaders and what sort of internal and external factors we are. So I have a second and final question for both panelists before moving on to the individual questions. It's actually talking about how we can create a better environment to create female leaders. So there's been a lot of talk of a glass ceiling and how certain countries and regions are more open than others to female leadership, talking about notably in Scandinavia, Northern Europe, for example. And this often boils down to a question of education and cultural barriers. Now, can both of you share your experiences on how education and culture can play a role in empowering more women to succeed in the future, and how we can bring down those barriers? So maybe Professor Amina, you can begin, and then thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, I'll just take us back. In fact, 2020 was meant to be the celebration year for the major conference we had in Beijing 25 years ago. And if we go back to the pledges made in Beijing and where we are today, we find that women have lost more than have gained. And unfortunately, with the COVID, we're going to lose even more. I'll just take just the health sector. If you look at the health sector, we find that over 70% of world health staff, they are made up of women. And yet we find that there's only 25% of them are leaders in this particular area. So this brings down, and again, the same scenario can be reproduced in many other sectors, be it in the science, be it in the economies, be it everywhere. We find that in spite of all the goodwill, in spite of all the motivation, in spite of the women want to do good things, wanted to do the right things, they're still excluded at the table. We are talking about women in leadership position. Yes, we are all leaders in our own way. We are leaders when we are cultivating our crops. We're leaders when we are running our homes, because at the end of the day, the woman is the rock on which a family builds itself, right? We all agree there. But this is where the difference lies. We need to have women in power. And I think Swati will know this, what I'm talking about, is that if we don't have these women at the power position, we will not be making headway, because the policies will still be the same, the laws will still be the same, and these policies will be forever excluding the women to the table. So my messaging has always been to the women that if you don't find your place at the table, you will be part of the menu. And if the seat is not there at the table, bring your own, because you will not be able to make any change up until we have our place at the table. Now, you bring on board the example of the Scandinavian countries. Yes, they have been very, very advanced in the way of thinking. And the situation is such that the notion of having a woman in leadership position or in politics, people don't balk at that. In fact, the country has been very progressive in its laws. For example, they have given full paternity leave, for example, to parents, and they have led the way in many instances so that women's rights are not kind of thwarted at any point. So yes, there is a notion of education that has to be brought into the picture. There is also the notion of culture. Because if we don't flag in the cultural aspect, we find that in many parts of the world, women will be forever excluded. Now, if you look at some parts of the world, Kevin, you'll find that female feticide are still very present. How do you change the mindset? How do you ensure that, if I quote Amartya Sen, the Nobel Prize winner in economics, he said, where are the 100 million missing women, for example, in a country like India? And so these are questions that we need to ask ourselves. Is it just purely education? Is it just purely structure? Is it purely cultural? I think it's a mix of all that. But women will be, if you look at the African continent, with all the issues that we've had, this continent has produced 5 women, 6, well, 5 plus 1, because 1 is still active as president. So we've had 5 ladies president in Africa. So these are the scenarios that we have to put forward. Yes, I agree with what Princess Nisreen has said. We need the media to be able to portray the right images. But unfortunately, the media has not been with the women, depending on where you are, or depending on in which part of the world you are in. So these are taboos that need to be broken. And to me, there is only one way to be able to break the taboo. We need to encourage women more. We need to encourage girls more. We need to ensure that the leaky pipe that we have, the holes are plugged, so that a better output will be there when you put in more women. So it needs to start young. It needs to start with a family. We need to be able to make changes one family at a time. We need to educate that girl. We need to keep on telling her that she's capable of doing anything, because she's capable of doing anything. But we need to encourage and build that self-confidence in that girl so that she comes there. Now, building self-confidence, reducing stereotypes, educating that girl, all this is fine, but we need the solidarity of women. Unfortunately, I have to say it here. We need the solidarity of women, because women are women worst enemies. So I make a plea to all the women in the world listening to us. When a woman has reached there, we as a community of women, we have to make sure that we keep her there, because she'll be the beacon to shed the light on the rest of us, and she'll be the model to whom we will look up to. That little girl growing in my village has been able to look up to me, for example, to know that it's possible to get there through sheer dint of hard work. So these are values that we have to inculcate in our women. These are values we have to inculcate in our societies. We need to ensure that, in fact, COVID has been a tremendous opportunity to show what strong, that enlightened women leadership can do to a country, to a region. And we've seen that with practical, good examples. Just now, I was listening to a short clip on Taiwan. Taiwan is COVID-free. Now, how did she get there? What the leadership that this lady has brought in to make sure that the country wasn't locked down? They still managed to get in early. They still managed to fight the virus, and they are among the winners. So these are concrete examples we have to bring in. So we, as a group of women, irrespective of what the media can do, because don't forget, let's not get blasé about the media. Sometimes they come in with their own agendas. So let us, as a community of women, thread this narrative in all our conversation, bring the role models, and show our girls that these are the trailblazers. These are the ladies who have made it. Let us again talk about the Wangari Maathai. Let us talk about the Winnie Mandela. Let us talk about the lady, our colleague in Ethiopia who has made it. Let us talk about the Joyce Banda. Let us talk about all these women who have made it. And in terms of women scientists, let us continue celebrating the Marie Curie. Let us celebrate the Dorothy Hodgkin. Let us celebrate all these women who have made it. And I think us as a group, we need to keep on singing the praises, and we need to keep on, as I said, celebrating them. It's only then that we will create the awareness that female leadership is different, female leadership is unique, female leadership is compassion, female leadership is taking every one of us by the hand. It's only then that we will make a dent in terms of addressing female leadership. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for these inspirational words. And yes, the point you touched on about female solidarity is something which was actually mentioned a lot in the chat. I saw lots of comments about that. And before passing the floor, I just wanted to say, you did put a smile on my face when you mentioned the female leaders in Africa, because something we're particularly proud of at JCI as well is that the African Middle East area this year is run by an executive vice president from Mauritius, a female leader from JCI in Mauritius, and also the biggest national organizations in the whole of Africa and Middle East, Nigeria, South Africa, amongst Benin and Morocco and even Congo and Lebanon are led by great female leaders as well. So it's a great source of inspiration too in African Middle East, even at JCI level, where we're nurturing young leaders for the future. So I'd like to ask the same question to Princess Nisreen. What is your take on how can education and culture barriers be brought down to empower more female leaders and bring them into the equation?
Well, first of all, allow me to thank Professor Amina for the courage of highlighting on so many important issues, and proud of you, Professor Amina. We are proud of you as a woman and as a human being. Thank you, and please keep up this voice raising, keep you raising your voice, because we need you. Now, my point on this question is quite a bit different, because for us, we worked on the issue of women in science since 1998 as an organization, and myself as well, because I lived inequality in science and all of these issues. And then through the work that with the Women in Science International League, which is a program of RASET, we found that there is a huge need for sociological and anthropological studies if we want to develop women in science or in other fields, to empower them for education, to understand their societies, to understand their laws, etc., etc. So if we look deep into the each society, because whatever is suitable for one country or particular society or particular community, not necessary to be suitable for the other. And this is where the international community failed, because they put everything global. They did not specify the problem based on each culture or community or society. So now our studies and framework should be also focused on this, the sociology and the anthropology of each society. Further, we need to understand that we cannot be the same, but we need equal and similar opportunities. For example, the woman farmer, she's a leader, because if she stopped farming, people in cities will not have enough food on the table. So this is a very simple explanation. Thus, we need to think about how to empower this woman in her own community. How? By giving her the tools she needs, the education, and also how to get better in her production, profit, etc. We don't need to change her beliefs or her culture. We need also to get real solutions for those in rural and urban areas. If we want to succeed, we need to provide solutions. We as women are quite good in this. So if you look at all conferences about women and water in throughout the years, for the last 20 years, you will hear about the same thing. A woman in rural or urban areas carrying the bucket on her head and walking like several miles. And what are the solutions? Instead of carrying the bucket on her head, have the rolling bucket. So actually, is that a solution? Did we think about water infrastructure to provide water to homes? The same is for education. We have been working on this issue as an organization for several years, for decades actually. And while some people want to provide internet and computers to a school in rural area, they neglect that these schools or these areas or schools do not have the basic requirements such as electricity, furniture, toilets, water fountains, school materials, etc. Therefore, the proper environment should be based on the society's needs and necessities. Another issue to raise here about the environment is creating balance between social life and professional life. How women can create such a balance? If you look at the early 20th century, where women used to do the housework, the washing, hand washing, drying clothes, ironing, etc., cooking, etc., etc. With all the difficulties they faced, they managed to their life, the social life, whether as mothers, wives, or even daughters, and also shined in different fields of sciences. And we can see this a lot. Now, the question raised here, why women in modern life cannot find such balance, even though they have the technology which facilitate a lot of housework, etc., etc. Why, or other related issues related to the social life? The answer has two parts here. Women have lost their identity, which led to such confusion. For example, in some parts of feminism movement, they started by showing the woman picture who showed her muscles, saying, I can do it. First, do I need to take the role of a man or be masculine to show that I can do something, or I can do science, or I can do engineering, medicine, or politics? Yes, we women can do anything, but why I have to do everything? The clever woman knows how to distribute responsibilities and duties. It is about knowing what that you are a woman, know your rights and responsibilities, manage your time the way you want, whether to work 20 hours or 12 hours. If women have self-esteem, self-confidence, peace inside them, then they will know how to manage their time, create balance in their lives, and also, most importantly, create partnership with their partners, whether at home or at work. And some people might say, oh, this is a bit difficult. No, it is not difficult. It is how do you want to do things? How do you want to achieve things? And it is about how much you can produce within an hour, not how many hours do you do work. Some people might say, oh, she is a princess, it's quite easy, you are not married, you don't have children, all of these things. So, well, yes, I am not married, I don't have children, and with all my work responsibilities that I have to work in different time zones, I still have time to paint. You can see my coffee paintings behind me here, some of them. I still have time to watch TV series and movies and go out with friends, watch even America's Got Talent, for goodness sake, cook my food, clean my apartment, and have time to mentor girls in science from Far East to North America to Africa and Europe. So actually, it is all about how do you manage your time. The second important issue is family. You know, if we look closer at the 20th century, early 20th century, working women had their parents or their parents-in-laws or their in-laws to help them in some points, whether they help with the children or it is more important to give psychological support, which is fundamental for fundamental part for women empowerment. Current societies are apart from the family. The presence of a family is a strength for every person, particularly women and girls. Well, you know, I've been mentoring girls for a very long time. And through my work, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, with young women and female youth, I just realized that they are missing the family environment. Unfortunately, the modern parents think about providing material things or working hard to put their children in the best schools, while they forget that the children need parents. We can see that this in successful women leaders, you know, and look at their family backgrounds. With regards to the culture and education, we need to understand the culture to empower women. We don't need to, you know, so many women organizations has failed in rural areas or urban areas because they want to bring their own ideas to these cultures. For me, I want to educate the girl. I want to empower this woman, put ambitions inside her, let her realize her dream, be a leader, etc., get best examples in front of her. But at the same time, I don't need to change her culture or her beliefs, etc. For me, I learned from my father, the late Prince Mohammed bin King Faisal I, how to use the words of Islam when communicating in certain parts of the world, whether it is for women's health, whether it is also for education, So I'm talking here when we're doing work with Muslim communities and encouraging girls, to go to schools, parents to send girls into the schools, because the Prophet Muhammad said that education is a must on every Muslim woman and man. It is a must. So therefore, when I use the words of the Prophet Muhammad on ordinary person, they will follow. They will not follow Nisreen, but they will follow the words of the Prophet. You see, this is how we need to understand the culture and move ahead. So actually, we need here, like we need to keep in mind that, like these issues, I don't need to change a culture. There was one thing, I will conclude with one example. There was a gentleman who had a business school in Pakistan, and it is about entrepreneurship, startup, etc. And he did very well. 65% of the beneficiaries of his startup programs, were women. But his own problem that the women are working from home, and he did not focus about the 65% of women, started their business, etc. But he focused that women staying at home. Do I need to change, the whole beliefs or the culture? We need to respect it if we want really to empower women. Now, back to one conclusion. First, we need planning, training programs for women and youth. We need to develop critical thinking, particularly in young females. We need to give them, as also Professor Amina just mentioned, the good example, the successful stories, and we don't need girls and youth to be like us, but to create their own legacy. This is the most important thing. We need to provide the girls and females with the knowledge, on what to study, what are the opportunities, etc., and let them take the lead. We need to encourage inside them the critical thinking and to put courage inside them to lead, not to be followers. And unfortunately, so many girls empowerment programs around the world, they are just much more like creating follower girls rather than leaders. And we need to create, as Professor Amina said, we women come together and bring real leadership programs into the girls from younger age. Because when you believe you are a leader, you can create a change.
Yes, thank you so much for that exposition on, I really believe in that point of inculcating leadership in young people, especially young girls from an early age, because it's something which can really boost self-confidence and develop latent talent from a young age as well. So I'd like to move on now to some specific questions. So I'd, for Professor Amina, I'd actually prepared a question, but I saw there were lots of links also from the audience where we can link it in. So the question is, with your experience as the 6th president of Mauritius and the first woman to serve in this role, what is your personal vision from your experience to bridge the gender gap and empower more female leaders in the field of government and political leadership? And also, what do you believe would be the role of men, and how can they help empower more women in their actions, like current male leaders, to bring them in and to help promote female leadership? So thank you.
Yeah, I think here we are increasingly we are using the word gender. So gender brings on board men and women together. In fact, there are some very interesting case studies or stories that when men mentor women, that woman is capable and more willing to take risk, be it in the world of business or be it in any other small, medium enterprises. So they will not go down the beaten track, as Nisreen had just said. They will want to create their own, of course, bring in the innovation and of course bring in the employment if it is small, medium enterprise. So this is something that we increasingly will look for. More coaching, more mentoring from the gender perspective, that is both men and women. So there is, we're not kind of being too feminist about it, and so we're going to exclude men, not at all. So bring in the gender agenda on board so that men and women can thrive together. Now, to bring in how do we make women become president, become prime minister, go that 1 or 2 notches above, which demarcate them from the middle management where many women are stuck. If I look at my country, we find many women at middle management position, but as we move up the ladder, they tend to disappear. So the issue is, how do we get the critical mass to go further up? Unfortunately, the world of politics is very often, in many countries I know, a world that many women will shy away from. And this, of course, is the paradox. Up until we get more women on board, we will not see the major changes in policy. We have seen some countries that have had enlightened leadership. We have seen some institutions that have enlightened leadership, where, for example, the UN now, we have parity, 50-50 with the leadership of the Secretary General. We have some countries in Africa that are now, there are more women in parliament. I think of Rwanda, for example, as one country, where they are bringing in more women on board. And we have seen wherever these women are present in sufficient numbers, we found that this country makes massive progress. So it makes good economic sense to bring in the women in this position. And also, again, to be very cliche, Kevin, a bird cannot fly with one wing. So we need both genders together to be able to make headway. Now, how do you get these women at the higher position, at that level where she will make a difference? Again, it's something that we women have to interiorize. We need to be able to take risk. I took calculated risk at some point, but it's something that no business school will teach you to do. You need to be able to do that. But to be able to take that risk, you need to be confident. And that confidence will only come when you have developed it from a very young age, when your father has inculcated that in you, when your husband is there also to accompany you. So behind every successful woman, there is not just the man, there is a society, there's the family. So we need to bring in that nurturing at a very young age, so that the woman will have the self-confidence and will have also the necessary infrastructure, if I may say, if I use the word infrastructure, on which she will build, she will move ahead, she will take the risk to be able to go to that higher position and not stop at middle management level. But again, I will reiterate the fact that to be able to do that, we will need the solidarity of men, women first, and of course we need the men to provide the mentorship and the surrounding environment around which that will help her get ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, indeed, it's good to have a complement and to have win-win situations at all levels, obviously. Yes, so I'd like to ask Princess Nisreen a question, since more from an economic perspective now, since we are the World Business Angels Investment Forum as well. The question is, based on your professional career in science and also your activities on the board of the World Business Angels Investment Forum, where we've been working with lots of female business leaders and entrepreneurs, what do you believe the role that women can play to obtain more leadership roles, notably in the field of entrepreneurship and startups, and especially in the role of the economic recovery after the COVID pandemic? And also, how can institutional help support institutions help support this female entrepreneurship slant as well? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would say, I always say to female youth and girls, do what you love. whether in the fields of science, business, arts, politics. If women love their profession, then nothing will stop them from being successful, successful leaders and lead the world actually in every possible way and create a change in the laws, as Professor Amina mentioned earlier at the beginning, that were created by men and for us to follow or, you know, like build on it. So now, what women can do after the pandemic. First, we need to invest in women in science, both in laboratories, those who are in laboratories or in social sciences, to create plans and frameworks on how to move forward. Now and after, women scientists can provide a lot. We need to listen to women in science, starting with analyzing the situation of the pandemic now, from health to science, all the way to economy. We need to listen to women experts. Such women do not want to, maybe we need also to listen to women experts. And those women experts, by the way, there are so many of them that they don't want to be seen or recognized by their gender, but rather by their expertise and how much they can offer to the society and the world. And we need to bring those women as experts. And this is something that maybe Professor Amina agree with me, that so many women around the world want to be seen as experts and to be identified by their expertise and how much achievements they provided rather than by being women, you know, identified by their gender. Now, the economic recovery is far beyond business because it is about the education, it is about health, about agriculture, about water, energy, environment, and above all about policy making. So it is very important to think, to look at that women can bring here, women experts can bring change, a real change into the system that failed us all now in this pandemic area, and how to recover from it, because a change, you cannot change, you know, women by nature, they are quite patient. So like, and this we can see, like, to be patient for 9 months of pregnancy and then, you know, bringing up a child, etc. So it is by nature, they are patient. So when they create a change, they know how to create it slowly or sometimes fast, but surely, you know, for the better. Now, as about the collaboration or about WBAF and how to move forward, I'm pleased that I represent here two parts. One, the personal part with the STI Commission of WBAF, and as well as an executive director of RASET and its collaboration partnership with WBAF. Well, actually, as you may know, RASET has been working on the spirit of Sustainable Development Goal 17 on creating partnership. Well, since our founding, and this is since 1968, it is like this. And this is translated, you know, like with our partnership with UN agencies, departments, governments, IGOs, and private sector and civil society. And we always stress on the importance of partnership with the private sector as a new step towards transforming the challenges into opportunities for women and girls in science. And when we talk about this, it is very important to focus on, like the how we can bring real, how we can work together to empower women and girls in science, technology, and innovation much more into leadership, building economy, and having, you know, into policy making level. Well, in this time of economic instability, it is critically important to transfer now the scientific knowledge into commercially viable enterprises, which can bring prosperity to local communities and in the longer term in the entire country. And we are, RASET and WBAF are now working on championing the invaluable contribution of the scientific research innovation and business to the growth of the economy. Particularly, we are focusing on it in the post-pandemic time. So we are building on it now because in a few months' time, we have to focus on bringing successful stories into this. And you will be surprised. It will be like a big surprise for our successful stories, on this issue. Now, how this can be done, it will be start by, bringing the shift. Let's put it in this way: the shift from scientific research into business application is not a straightforward one, and it requires additional skills that are included in the scientist training. We should include this in scientist training as well. And we are addressing this knowledge gap with WBAF to the benefit of scientists, engineers all around the world. Indeed, it is here what we are talking about. Research, science is very important. And the most important thing is to reinvest and put our power in investing in science. If we were investing in science, we won't live that lockdown era. We will be now conducting our work. People will be back to their jobs. We won't have a high rate of unemployment and people on social security services, or the number of poverty will increase. Science is it brings the real solution, and the solution of science can be implemented anywhere, everywhere, because it always looks at different factors. Maybe Professor Amina agree with me on this, that we always look at the factor of the environment, the culture, etc., and how it can move to be, beneficial for, like the society or a humanity. Now, we need also to think here about what is every science should go to business. What about the public and private partnership? We need to control somehow some private sector, through public partnership, and to control the, not to control in the meaning of controlling, but as much as to develop both. We need both of these sectors to have partnership, particularly when it comes to health and education, because we don't want in some companies to take over, to take the lead in a vaccine, that they will sell it for a very high price where other countries cannot afford it. So this is the thing. Now, we also, we need to think here about how to bring, the networks, the real network of experts to benefit. Because not every woman in science or every scientist can move into business, but they have the vision, the idea that can benefit the business. How we can, not every person should start his or her own company, but rather how we can come together with the same idea, work together in partnership. This is quite important. So I think it's all about partnership. It's all about investing in science. More than ever, science, not technology. Technology is a tool, it's not a solution. People need to understand that technology is not a solution. Science is the solution. And the most important thing, how to invest in science, by keeping people in science. Because as long as people are in science, not leaving science, then they can innovate. This is the main thing. We are facing a big problem around the world. People are leaving science. Scientists are leaving science, because they have no recognition, because like you have a celebrity coming from nowhere, with respect to them, like I'm not, like judging their talent. They are talented in certain way. Or a sport person, then they take all these millions in salaries, recognition in media. When they go into the airport, oh my God, they are highly regarded. When you have someone who is a full professor or, like a president of university, nobody will pay attention to them. I'm not saying that we need to be better than others, but at least to show some value for us as scientists, as doctors, as people working on this field, also to show value for teachers. This is very important because the teachers create the real scientists, that they can remain in science and invest, and also, and innovate. That's very important. We need to focus on. So in fact, it's all about, as Professor Amina, to recognize the role of women and men in science and to thank them. We need to recognize, since the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, since 2016, when I said we remember every February 11, we remember women in science, those who are known and unknown, remembered and forgotten, who forged the way for us in science today. We need to remember every single woman and man in science in every country. There are amazing women and men in science. In Africa, there are incredible people in science, and we need to keep recognizing their achievements. Also in Latin America, in Far East, in Central Asia, in Europe, everywhere there are amazing people in science, and we need just to keep appraising them in every single way. And this is one of the things that we are working on as RASET and WBAF. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I do like the point you were making about having to empower teachers and scientists and how it actually all comes together. And I did note your mention of the UN Sustainable Development Goals as well. And indeed, all these are interlinked. We've got SDG number 4 on quality education, which links up to partnerships, SDG 17, and also to good employment and good jobs and economic growth in SDG 8. So I think that, and not to mention the topic of SDG 5 on gender equality. So we can see that these sustainable development goals are more relevant than ever in this changing world, and how more women leaders can contribute. Yes, time is flying right now, and we've received lots and lots of questions from the audience, so we won't have time to go through all of them, because there have been lots and interesting comments as well. We've got about 10 minutes left before we start concluding remarks and wrapping up. But I saw one pretty interesting question, which actually I can ask to both of you briefly. It's about if could our panelists share one experience themselves where they helped and supported another woman to rise up in terms of mentoring, because it boils back to the point Professor Amina was raising before about how women should help other women. I found it particularly relevant. So maybe Professor Amina, if you wish to begin and share your experience, if you have one.
Sure. When I decided to leave the comfort of my academic position at university, and I set up my own company, which was translating my research into a business, I recognize, of course, that was subsumed that the contribution of women to traditional knowledge is there. So in fact, I stood on the shoulders of all these great ladies who had contributed information to me so that I could further advance my career. So what I did, I took my database on herbal medicine and translated that into a business so that we could generate innovative molecules for pharma companies, for food sector, for cosmetics, because we still need to go back to nature in terms of generating innovative ingredients. So that was the structure on which the premise on which I set up my own business. So already I was a product of the support that was given to me by these ladies out in the community, sharing the knowledge with me. And then when I ended up being an entrepreneur, I realized when I looked back, I looked around me, I found that all my employees were women. It wasn't by design, but
So now we need gender equality. Excellent.
100%, almost 100% women. Again, as I said, it wasn't by design. But what I found was that when women were engaged in the process, they showed a lot of dedication. They believed in what I was putting forward. And more importantly, my partner, I must say, was a man, but of course, he also believed in me. So I had the benefit of that kind of support. But what I found, women, when they get involved in this, they get very, very dedicated. They show a lot of, they were prepared to do a lot of hard work and go beyond working hours if needs be, but they had to be convinced on the cause. And this is something that women tend to do. We tend to rally around, again, the team and bring them. And also what I was doing, and again, something that I've heard Princess Nisreen say as well, you have to enjoy what you're doing, because if you don't enjoy what you're doing, I mean, your life would be hell. So in fact, this is something I said to my children. Always enjoy what you're doing so that your work becomes your passion and your work becomes your hobby. Now, again, something I heard I just quickly react on, we have said a lot of critical thinking. Now, the critical thinking is very important, because if we are going to generate innovators on the continent, we need to start making people think laterally. But one thing we have to look at in order to generate critical thinking in our youth is to prevent them do rote learning. They have to start learning with their hands. They have to discover. Science is all about discovery, touching, feeling, tasting, even in some instances. But children have to learn with their hands more and more, and leave the rote learning, leave all these memory for Google, because the information is there now out in the net, so they can get that. But they have to learn with their hands so that they become innovators. And eventually, we know that this will be the only way forward. And in fact, as you have rightly said, it's the first time in UN history when they have recognized the centrality, the central role that science plays. In fact, the SDGs is the recognition, is the epitome of the recognition that science can be, is there for the better good of all of humanity. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I have the same question for Princess Nisreen. You want to go ahead?
Thank you so much. Well, the lovely thing about the science, and of course, so many people don't know about that the sustainable development, there is a declaration about science and culture for sustainable development that was adopted in 2013. And this is the core, actually, of sustainable development goals and the 2030 agenda. Now, education and science are the core of every aspect of all these SDGs and its targets and indicators. The main thing now is to look at how we can move ahead, and do really good work for others and for ourselves, in fact. Now, about my personal experience, as you may know, that I worked very hard, to bring me and my colleagues from RASA to bring Resolution 70/212 proclaiming February 11 as the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. I'm a good fighter. I keep fighting, in the international community. I have, I'm so blessed to have my brothers and my family behind me, supporting me in this fight to bring justice for more women. And also the other big issue that we created inside the UN, that I challenged everybody inside, the international community, is to have girls in science panels. So imagine girls in science from around the world, they come design their own panel and they speak, about discuss any issue they want. They come out with their recommendations and they presented in the closing ceremony of the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. Now, from out of these recommendations, the girls, we brought the girls and we established the Girls in Science for SDGs international platform, that through this, we develop in girls the critical thinking, how to express their opinions about specific SDG, about international days or decades or weeks or years observed by the UN, or about some issues related to the international community, about education, about science, technology, and innovation. And also they have a section called Shining Stars, where they report about their shining stars from their communities. So we know about a shining star from India, to another shining star from Kenya, to another one from Costa Rica, Peru, etc., which is something really important. And Professor Amina and Swati, prepare yourself, because the girls would like to invite you, for, interviews. They said, oh, they knew that I'm here today in this panel, and they decided, oh, okay, can we invite them for interviews? I said, yes, of course you can invite them, but it is up to their schedule, if when this can be done. They are so excited. On 23rd of April, we launched the Spanish section of that platform, where girls from Spanish-speaking countries who do not speak English can write their articles, their views, etc. There is another thing that we are going to launch in 3 weeks' time, which is a special software that was developed for us for webinars, e-learning. Of course, we are not doing, replacing the school, but rather giving tutoring, where Girls for Girls in Science are doing. And this will be in 3 weeks' time, will be online. And also online workshops for the girls, where they will learn from so many things. The girls range from with us from 9 years old all the way to 17 years old. So many of them now are at the university, studying at universities, and still active in the girls platform, because they are mentoring other girls. Well, I feel myself, sometimes I am the mother, sometimes I am the daughter, and they are the mothers, because they keep teaching me about technology. And also they have great opinions to raise. They created the great initiatives, like we have Olivia from United States, 11 years old girl, created just a week ago 1 billion voices campaign, which is to bring 1 billion signatures for investing in science. And she's working on it. All of it, their ideas, I help them how to develop their ideas and how to move forward. I do one thing with the girls, that I ask questions and let them find the answer. As Professor Amina just said, let them explore things, let them put their hands on the subject. And I think, and also the girls developed with the International Chamber of Commerce Ilham competition. Ilham in Turkish and Arabic means inspiration, which is a competition for renewable energy and sustainable development, the nexus of energy with renewable energy with the other SDGs. So yes, this is one of the examples that I can give about creating girls leaders who are now even analyzing UN reports from gender lens to that extent. So this is one of my work.
Thank you so much for this testimony of how you've inspired so many shining stars in female leadership. So I think we've got about 5 minutes left, unfortunately. As I said, time's been flying, and I think it's already time to make some concluding remarks. So I'd like to ask each of you if you can say a few words to sum up your points of view in about 2 minutes, so that we can then conclude. So Professor Amina, please.
As we are moving outside, well, hopefully very soon we'll be getting out of the COVID era. So we will be again reborn into this world. But for us to be born again well, we need to empower more women. And here I have a special thought for these women entrepreneurs who will need a proper stimulus package from their respective government to be able to sustain livelihoods. We need to keep on investing again in our girls. We need to build the trust. We need to build the confidence in them. And we need to invest in the sciences. We need to invest in their education. We need to invest in their livelihoods for those parts of the world where it is not obvious. In Africa, right now, we need to invest in the public health sphere. We need to empower them with knowledge, with the wisdom that has been inculcated, has been given to us by our parents. So all in all, we need to create the appropriate environment for a little girl to grow up so that tomorrow we'll have a cohort of women who are empowered, who are confident, who are beautiful, and who can say, yes, we can do it.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, and for these inspiring words. And same, Princess Nisreen, if you can make a conclusion to this session.
Well, I will conclude. I just opened my father's study that he submitted to the international community in 1973. It is about the methods of empowering women in science in the world to achieve socio-economic sustainable development. And that was his study in 1973. So he had one of the quotes that I love so much, or one of the parts. The world, and I quote here, the world which is full of resources and talented human beings desperately need the potentials embedded in women. Empowering and advancing women gives wealth and power to society. If women are given the opportunity, they will have the greatest impact on building a socially and economically strong society. And by neglecting their role and impact, the loss is on the entity of society and the whole world. The loss of female talent is more severe and greater than any national loss or forced sacrifice of resources and natural assets. An educated woman with the competence and talent is an asset to any nation, and its existence will be the richer for every woman they invest in. If our goal is to reform and develop society sustainably, we must first and foremost empower scientific competencies equally. And also, just one thing I would like, if I may, which is about recognizing the role. My father, Prince Mohammed bin King Faisal I, he wrote the acknowledgement of this study. He wrote, I would like, and I quote here, I would like to express my sincere thanks and appreciation to my partner, companion, and wife, Her Royal Highness Sharifa Fatima Al-Hashimite, for giving me the vision, support, and encouragement in every aspect of life, who teaches me every day, enlightening my way of thinking and work through her amazing knowledge and vision. Just as I am learning from Her Highness Sharifa Fatima, so I will continue learning, for she is my mentor, my teacher, and my advisor. And without her, I will not be who I am today. So actually, this is the thing that we got. This is the real partnership, companionship, and as well, the real love and passion to serve humanity. It is about the we mentality rather than the I mentality. This, and just I would like to wish everybody the safe and success and good health, and we need to bring our generations into believing in education, the power of education and science, and as well to believe in peace and to believe in themselves. And that's my last words. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for this heartfelt final message, Princess Nisreen, and thank you also to Professor Amina for your inspirational words. Now, if if President Swati will authorize me to say some final words before concluding the session, I would like to thank you all for the honor of moderating such a talented panel. It's been hugely inspirational, I think, not just for the women listening, but also for the men to hear the potential of female leadership. And both of you speakers, as well as President Swati, are true role models, I believe, for women in the future. I know that lots of my friends from Mauritius, from Croatia, from around the world have been watching this session, and from Norway as well. And it's been truly great. And what I took away from it was so many things. It was so rich, but I do believe that it's important for anybody who is young to really do what they love and to follow their passion. And I know that you have both followed your passion in the science world, in my molecular biology, and in the global field of science. And it's we can see the success that this has brought to you both, and the power of learning by doing, and also of solidarity. So I think it's important to empower and encourage young female leaders to develop their skills and to break that glass ceiling once and for all, and to inspire a better world, because a better world is a world where nobody cares about gender, but as I mentioned, where the only criteria to judge a good leader is whether he or she is judged on merits and on talents. So with that, I would like to conclude. I would like to thank all the listeners for taking part and for your questions as well. This session has been streamed live on YouTube, and I believe it will be available as well. So I hope that you will be able to join the next sessions of the World Business Angels Forum, and there's some amazing panelists lined up as well. So I hope to see you soon, and I wish you to all stay safe, stay healthy, and to stay positive, because we're all in this together around the world, and we should stay united in the face of this pandemic. Thank you so much, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.